Welcome back to Saints Squad. I'm Roast Dylan Sanders of Saints Wire and Tulane Green Wave on SI, and I think the Saints should just go ahead and get their guy.
I think, everybody, I'm Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On at Saints podcast, and I think that the New Orleans Saints should get their guy, but do it when it makes sense.
John Hendricks, publisher for Athlon Sports, covering your New Orleans Saints. And if I'm not back in 5 minutes, just wait longer.
This is former Saints wide receiver Lance Moore, and I think all Saints fans are due for some good news.
It's the Saints Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything New Orleans Saints, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from down in the Big Easy, the way only Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. It's the Saints Squad show, starting now.
It's draft week.
Draft Oh, hello, that nation. Welcome back to the Saints Squad, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen every Monday and Thursday. We have a unique group of experts here ready to bring you a fun and informative show on everything New Orleans Saints. Today, we're going to be talking, you guessed it, the NFL draft. Should the Saints build around Spencer Rattler? What if they want a quarterback in the draft, but both Jaxson Dart and Shedeur Sanders are both off of the board? Should they just instead focus on building the trenches out? And then we're going to jump into real quick, what if the Saints end up needing to trade up for a passer in the draft? Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. What's up, guys?
Yo.
What up?
Hello. It is that time. It's draft week. We're almost through. I'm gonna watch draft day tonight and everything. It's so exciting.
It's that time.
It's that time. I watch it every year. I'm so excited. But let's just jump into it. So we're gonna be going through and grading a bunch of different draft scenarios today. So get your GM caps on. What if the Saints want a quarterback so bad at the 2025 NFL draft, they end up needing to trade up for one in the first round? Is that a worst case scenario, disaster? Ross, give me your grade on that.
Yeah, I'm giving that one an F very quickly. Right? Like, that's the idea, is trading up from 9 to move up and go and grab a quarterback. I think unless the Tennessee Titans shock everybody and draft Will Campbell #1 overall, and therefore Cam Ward falls to pick 4 or something like that, there's no reason for the New Orleans Saints to trade up from 9. I have a visual aid if you guys would like to see it. I will explain it for those that are also listening along. But this is sort of the way that I feel about this. I think the New Orleans Saints should avoid trading up in the first round and instead look at trading up from the second round. And we're going to use the little hotline bling from the Canadian singer who thinks he can rap. And so this is what we're looking at here. I think the New Orleans Saints should go the route of trading up from the second round, not trading up in the first round. Shout out Kendrick, by the way.
That's right. Look, hey, and to your point, we just learned Monday morning, not that we should be shocked, the Saints are already having exploratory calls of trading up in the second round from Adam Schefter. Yep. And so, look, they're going to be calling all week. That's not really going to be that big of a surprise. But I'm with you, Ross. I don't think that the Saints, I know you want to go get your guy, but looking at what this team needs and the fact that you have 6 picks within the top 150 and the amount of needs you need on this roster right now, look, I think they can get a quarterback that they like, right? I just feel like that's where that's going to happen. But if you want to trade up a few spots, if you ever look at Jimmy Johnson's draft chart, you know, the pick calculator and the value there, I think going up even a couple of spots is going to cost you a lot. And so I'd like to see him wait. I think they can still get their guy. It just depends on if they feel like their guy is going to be there, because it's really interesting right now that a lot of people are saying no to Shedeur Sanders, and that's not who they're looking at. And I mean, we'll see, but I think that, you know, for the Saints, stay put at 9 unless you see somebody like a Cam Ward fall that you really want, or maybe it's somebody else that you really like. I mean, we've talked about Abdul Carter before. I think you could trade up and try to get him if you could get in the top 5. I doubt that's realistic, or Mason Graham, but quarterback, no.
Yeah, F.
I guess I'll play devil's advocate here a little bit, because I don't know. I don't know what it is with me in the draft in the past few years. None of it matters. If you like a guy, just go get him. Trade over your picks. The 3rd round pick and the next year's first, they're not going to work out anyway. You just go get your guy and get someone you like. Get him in the building. None of it matters. I'm the draft nihilist. Dylan Sanders, draft nihilist. None of it matters. Just go get your guy.
No nihilist, Dylan the Thump Sanders.
I just wouldn't give it an F. I think it's just, at the end of the day, if they go and trade up for Shedeur, Kellen Moore really, really likes him. And if they trade up for Jaxson Dart, maybe that's enough. And I think that at the end of the day, they get the guy that they want. They get the quarterback they want. They get the passer that they need. And that's fine.
Well, I'm gonna give it a F plus, I guess.
Okay, all right. It's not an F minus.
And by the way, if I'm the president of the Saints and you're my GM, Dylan, you're fired. All the picks matter.
That's right.
This is 2025, and all picks matter.
That one took me a second. Sorry.
Good night, everybody.
All right, y'all. Thank you.
The only quarterback, in my opinion, who I would say would be worth trading up for is Cam Ward. But what you would have to give up to move from 9 to 1 would be insane. And it's not just, hey, let's give up our 2nd or 3rd round pick this year and a 1st round pick next year. I think it would be a whole lot more than that. That the 8 picks in between is a significant amount that any team would be worthy of asking for. Okay, you want to come up to number 1, you're going to have to give us a king's ransom to move up here. And I just don't think that sacrificing the rest of this draft and potentially a bunch of picks in next year's draft would be worth trying to move up to number 1. Now, in the scenario that the Titans don't pick a quarterback and maybe Cam Ward is beginning to slip a little bit, maybe you start to have some exploratory conversations then. But today, as we sit here, I'm not interested in mortgaging the rest of the draft potentially, and at least our 1st round pick next year. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Even though I do feel like Cam Ward is that type of player. He's the one quarterback in this draft that I think is going to be really special. I think Shedeur has great potential. I think he can be a franchise leading quarterback. I just think that the athleticism that Cam Ward has makes him a little bit different. And I think will eventually make him more effective earlier, potentially in the NFL than Shedeur. But I'm not interested in us trying to make a move like that. Maybe later, and shout out to Ross with the early Drizzy shots. But again, that is an ultimate meme. I mean, that's one of the better memes that I've seen in the last 5 or so years.
Yeah. If we get to a point where we just can't see Drake anymore, we can just blur the face out, and then you know what I mean, and then everything else still works.
Can we put Lance's face on top of him?
It's 100% what we should do. That's 100% what we should do. I'll work on that.
Oh, Ross. Well, you mentioned it. What if the Saints do trade up in the 2nd round, from the 2nd round to the 1st round? They get their guy at 9. What happens? What would a move like that look like?
Yeah. So what I look at is like, okay, let's say they take Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end, at 9, or they go like LSU offensive lineman Will Campbell or something like that, right? They focus on the trenches, or they go and get a big bodied pass catcher for there, or maybe they go with Michigan corner Will Johnson, right, to fill that other big hole at starting corner. I think that then you could see them potentially look to move up from 40. If we go back to 2018, that was when the Baltimore Ravens traded up with the Philadelphia Eagles. They moved from like the 50s up to 32. They moved from 52 to 32. It was 20 spots. And so what Baltimore did was that they gave up 52 pick 125 in the third round and then a future second from the next year. And then in return, they got pick 32 in the first round, as well as pick like 132 in the fourth round. So they kind of
Who
did
was
like
32 again?
Say it was Philadelphia. Exactly. It's the same team as this year, right? And both coming off of Super Bowl wins and everything like that. And so like there's an opportunity here to see that team potentially move out if you can give them something that they're looking for. And so the equivalent to that, I imagine, would be the Saints giving up 40 next year's second round pick, and then either 112 or 132, maybe swapping that with Philly's 134. You're not asking them to move 20 spots back like Baltimore did last year. They're only moving back 8, or that year, they're only moving back 8 spots in this scenario. So then you can get up to pick 32 and you can take whichever one of those quarterbacks is there for you that you're targeting. Get the 5th-year option, get ahead of Cleveland at 33, who could also look to move up too. So you might be a little bit in competition with them. So if you see the price raise, that's why. So that's what I would look at. That's effectively what it would cost to do that.
And John, are you more on board with that?
Yeah, I think you could trade back into the first. I'm like trading up into the second as well. But again, look, they've got the extra third, they got the extra fourth. I don't like the scenario of dipping into the cookie jar next year, right? Like I think at 9, you need to come away with a day one impact starter, right? And if you're talking about like a Tyler Warren, a Will Johnson, a Jahdae Barron, some of these guys that can go into your roster and help support this win now, compete, all this stuff that supports the vision that they've done, I feel like that's okay, fine. But if you're looking at like Tyler Shough is the guy that's shooting up everybody's draft board right now, right? Like I've seen him go from being a day 3 pick to now he's 3rd round, now he's a 2nd round pick, all this other stuff. Like this is the thing where everybody starts moving at the last minute. Like some players this is why mock drafts kind of just go out the window, because you see all these players just move at the last second. And so look, in round 2, I still think you can come away with a premier starter, right? I think if, we'll talk about later, you can come away with a great interior offensive lineman, a good wide receiver, somebody for the trenches. I just don't know. Again, I'm just the guy that likes the picks. I feel like if they can stay put and get those 6 picks within top 50, I don't care what happens after 4th round. Like I get it. You might get some guys in 5th, 6th, 7th, whatever the case may be. They can find some really good gems in undrafted talent. But if your guy's there and you feel like your hands forced, and I think that's the biggest thing is Mickey and Jeff Ireland and Kellen Moore. I'm curious to see how that works this year, right? Because in the past, it's been Dennis Allen, it's been Sean Payton working with those guys. But how much influence is Kellen Moore going to have there? And how much is the Derek Carr situation going to force their hand? I think that's the other side of the coin, is that now that all this Derek Carr stuff is, do you feel comfortable with Spencer Rattler and then maybe trying to trade for a veteran or get somebody in here? Or do you feel like you have to go get that guy to get another quarterback on the roster? And I think that's the scenario we're talking about, is them trading up back into the first or trading up into the second to get their quarterback. That's probably what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
I just, I'm this is my personality now. I'm the nihilist, and that's what it's going to be for the rest of the time. No, I think it's fine to trade up at the end of the first round to get back into the first round. Because, just go get your guy. And I think as long as the Saints are confident with the passer that they are entering next season with, I think that's about as much as you can ask for after the past couple of years of mediocre quarterback play.
Yeah.
But
it stinks that this isn't a draft where it looks like people are trying to trade up to the top 10, because it almost would make more sense to trade back from 9. I know the Saints don't do it. I know they haven't done it since 2007. I understand. But like this feels like that draft where there's so little difference between, pick 6 and pick 40, right? To where once those top 4 or 5 guys are gone, then all of a sudden, like, you're kind of in the same grades area. If that is true, teams aren't going to be looking to trade up. But that's also the perfect environment in which to trade back, pick up more selections, and then you could trade up again later to get back into that first round. But you picked up additional draft capital to help you out. But I just know that that's not something that the Saints need. Yeah, no, that's not something that they do. They don't like to trade back and all that, but it almost feels like this would be the perfect draft to do it. But at the same time, no one's going to want to. No one's going to be interested in doing so.
We've come a long way from Shedeur Sanders wearing Giants cleats during a game or whatever
I
that
know,
was.
right?
Oh, man. Well, coming up next, we're going to look at a scenario in which the Saints don't draft a quarterback at all and decide to go with a different position. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Just turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with the Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. As premium titles from as easily as you stream your favorite TV shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV shows from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. I've been watching The Pit, and that show is constantly changing vibes, just kind of like how I feel about the New Orleans Saints draft. Host with hardcore gaming experience, head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Welcome back. And again, put on your GM caps, John, because I'm about to ask you, what if the Saints don't draft a quarterback or any skill position? They just are like, hey, we need to focus on the trenches. They go offensive line in the first round, defensive line in the second round.
Yeah, look, again, the GM cap for what it's worth. I think for this one, they do believe in building in the trenches. If you ask Mickey, that is not a secret that they do believe in building from the trenches within and such. But as far as offensive line goes, I just don't like that in the first round, right? Like, I don't think that you try to go find you an interior offensive line because that's where they need it left guard. They brought in Dylan Radins. That's probably your left guard solution. But again, I think they need to reinforce their depth. So if you're going first round, I guess I'd say Will Campbell would be your guy as far as an offensive lineman goes. And then that allows you maybe second round Kenneth Grant in Michigan. That could be a potential pick. I kind of like the fact of going with the offense or defensive lineman first, then getting the offensive lineman, like a guy like a Donovan Jackson in round 2. But, look, if you're going to build from the trenches, you need somebody that can help stop the run. Because, again, we've beat the dead horse, 31st ranked run and attack, rush defense last year. And so, again, you've got to give it some attention there. And so I feel like if you go offensive lineman first, yes, it's important. Yes, I'd love to have the Detroit Lions offensive line right now on on the Saints team. But you got to invest there. I still think that they have a good offensive line where they're at right now. They just need to take it to the next level. We saw how valuable Eric McCoy was last year. Cesar Ruiz needs to play better. I think Taliesin Fuanga is in for a really big leap in second year. Same thing with Trevor Penning. And I feel like Brennan Nugent is going to coach up and bring a lot more additions and build off of what John Benton was able to do last year at that position. So, look, I wouldn't like an offensive lineman personally. I think Will Campbell would be my guy if I had to choose an offensive lineman in the first round, and if I was the Saints, because I feel like you could throw him inside or you could put him on the left side, left tackle if you wanted to. But Trevor Penning's there. They're not moving him inside, and so that's kind of where you're at. And it's a rock and a hard place there.
I almost wonder if, I don't know, I kind of wonder if Josh Simmons ends up tempting anybody depending on his medicals. Josh Simmons being a dude coming out of Ohio State as an offensive lineman that was seen as probably the best offensive lineman or one of the 2 best offensive linemen going into this draft, but then has some injury history and stuff like that. If the medicals check out, I wonder how quickly teams run for him and what possibilities that opens for New Orleans on the offensive line, or if he's a guy that falls into the second round, right? And if he falls into the second round, a la Eric McCoy back in the day, then all of a sudden, like that's a home run pick at 40. And you have the opportunity to invest 9 at a little bit of an earlier spot and stuff like that. I'm really curious about what his outlook is going to be. Josh Connerly, the offensive lineman out of Oregon too, where those guys are going to go. It feels like offensive line is really strong, like 2nd to 5th round for me. and everything. Whereas in the first round, I kind of agree with John. I think I'd rather see the team, if they go for the trenches, go for the defensive side of the football. Like if Mason Graham happens to be there, that's an easy selection for me. That feels like the obvious guy in that case. But I'm really curious to see, like, James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. Where and when does he go? Donovan Eziraku out of Boston College. Where and when does he go? I think he's probably not a 9 guy, but I'm real curious to see like what the defensive players are that tempt New Orleans. The one that would leave me scratching my head would be Shedeur Stewart. That's the one that would leave me scratching my head. I could even buy Michael Williams a little bit at 9, but Shedeur Stewart's one that I couldn't buy. I feel like Shedeur Stewart drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles is very different than the Shedeur Stewart drafted by New Orleans, right? Like the Saints aren't in position to do that and everything and build up that like defensive end with raw traits and, very low production and all that other stuff.
4.5 career sacks. That doesn't scare you at all, Ross.
Right. No, that's why I'm saying I couldn't, that's the one I couldn't, rectify at all. I would have a lot of trouble finding like okay, here's maybe why they did it outside of like, he's tall. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think that the Saints are, I just don't think the Saints are in position to do that. It's no shade at him. I think if he ends up in the right situation with the right coaches, the right team, the right scheme, he'll be great. But New Orleans is not that.
That's a lot of ifs.
Yeah.
Ifs.
And New Orleans is none of those ifs, is the thing. Not right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? New offensive scheme, new defensive scheme, new coaching.
I think I'll do less talking about players and more talking about philosophy here. Building from the trenches is always going to be smart because everything begins and ends up front. If you're an offensive line and you can't create running lanes, you don't have a chance. If you're an offensive line and you can't protect, hey, last year we had a tough time protecting, then you can't win games. If you're a defensive front and you aren't stout up front, you can't stop the run. You can't rush the passer. You can't create pressure. You don't have enough sacks. You're going to struggle to win games. You're going to put extra pressure on your defense. Your defensive backs are going to have to cover longer and potentially become one of the all-time leading penalty getters on defense from the cornerback position. Everybody used to like to pick on Paulson Adebo for all the penalties that he got, but I played wide receiver for a long time, and I realized it's not just the cornerback out there that has an impact on those types of scenarios, right? If you can't get pressure up front and the quarterback's back there patting the ball and waiting for his guy to get open and having all day to throw, then that makes the defensive back's job that much harder. Not being able to touch guys after 5 yards down the field, those things happen. So I just think that while it would not be sexy for the Saints to focus on the big fellas, I would totally understand. And if I'm a general manager and I'm sitting at 9 and like you said, Ross, and I think John, like if Mason Graham is sitting there at
easy
9,
easy.
You take him. And if Mason Graham is gone and Will Campbell somehow is sitting there at 9, I don't have a problem taking Will Campbell. Now, if you take Will Campbell at number 9, he's obviously going inside and playing guard, which that would be something that they have already totally evaluated and figured that he'd be able to do. I've had some conversations with some former offensive linemen that were teammates of mine who said he would be great inside. I just, I don't think it would be something that the fans would be clamoring over, but I would totally understand if that was the route that the Saints decided to go. The depth thing for me is the most important, right? Like, okay, if you plug Will Campbell in at guard, now we've got a solid 5 starters, but as we know, guys get injured every single year. Somebody's going to be out for a certain period of time. You've got to be able to have more guys to plug and play. And I don't necessarily love it, but I totally understand it if that's the route that they choose to go.
It's funny how much the Derek Carr news didn't move the needle for me at quarterback at 9, but it moved the needle for me at offensive line at 9. Because if you look back at last year, the Saints offense surrendered 37 sacks. 8 of which were against Derek Carr, who had 10 different starts, 22 of which were against Spencer Rattler, who had 6 starts, and then 6 of which were against Jake Haener, who had 1 start. That makes perfect sense because there's a difference between what the game looks like for a rookie quarterback and a second-year quarterback who's effectively a rookie quarterback in Jake Haener, and what the game looks like for an 11-year veteran. And so for me, investing in the offensive line all of a sudden became more important than it already was because of the fact that you're likely turning to a young quarterback for 2025. So I'm with you, Lance. I completely get it. I do think that you can build your trenches with those 3rd and 4th round picks just as effectively as you can. Like, I don't think that not investing in the offensive line at 9 erases your opportunity to. I'm not saying that you said that, but I'm expanding on it. But like, I don't think that not investing at 9 precludes you from being able to still build and focus in the trenches thanks to those mid-round picks and thanks to how strong this draft is in day 2 and early day 3. But whether it's Will Campbell at 9 or it's Tate Ratledge in the 3rd round or William Grant in the 3rd round, or Charles Grant in the 3rd round from William and Mary. Those guys, I think, help you build your offensive line. But the thing with Will Campbell is that he's day 1, right? He's a day 1 impact, immediately comes in there. And so I see the value in that. And I almost see the value more post Derek Carr injury on the offensive line than I do at quarterback, if that makes any sense.
Is it easier to build out the trenches in 3 and 4 than it would be to then go ahead and pick up those skill position players?
I don't know. I think so, because there are so many of those, particularly interior offensive linemen that are bolstered in that, or that are clustered, in that area, because like interior offensive line is seen as that like non-premium position to where you're not necessarily projecting those guys in the 1st round. And since the Saints seem pretty settled at tackle, they seem okay at tackle. We'll see, but I don't know if I believe them either, right? Because we were also told that in that same press conference and that same availability where Kellen Moore said that they're very comfortable with Trevor Penning at right tackle and very comfortable with Taliesin Fuang at left tackle, they were also super excited to see Derek Carr on April 14th. And then we saw where that all went. And so I don't know how much of it is really about that. You know what I mean? I think that the board is going to dictate all of it more than anything else. I don't know that it's going to be that they plan on trying to address certain positions at certain times. It's just who's the top guy when they were on the board, which isn't a bad way to go. But yeah, maybe impacts your ability to not necessarily build out those skill position players because of how strongly and how highly ranked those maybe trench players will be in those middle rounds.
And everybody's got to remember that the mock draft boards or the boards for these other analysts doesn't matter compared to what the Saints have. The Saints have their top 150, top 300. They have their own board that they make up. So, of course, when you look about the evaluation process and everybody's like, oh, they overdraft this guy or they do this or whatever, it only matters how they view these prospects, not what everybody else says on the outside. And so there's always going to be those shock and awe from players that they'll take and all this other stuff. I think they can get skill players in the 3rd and 4th round, especially at tight end. You know, guys like maybe Gunnar Helm from Texas or Rondé Gadsden in the 2nd. I think he's somebody that is really fascinating to think about. But look, I think trenches, again, to everybody's point, they haven't been that great in the trenches for a while now, right? And of course, they need to invest there. That's why I was on board and said last week on the last week's show, if they could get Ashton Genty at 9 and then control the run game with Spencer Rattler, with him and Alvin Kamara, I'd be totally on board with that. But you got to have the trenches solidified there, and you've got to stop the run game on the other side, because this NFL evolution has put more of an emphasis on the run game. I mean, look at your division. You've got Bijan Robinson, you've got Rachaad White on the other side, and Bucky Irving at Tampa. I mean, you got to be able to stop the run in this, and they're going to face some good run games in 2025.
Well, coming up next, we're going to be talking about dipping back into the quarterback conversation, but with a couple of different names. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart. The guy we believe showcased the strength and the power needed to push the Saints forward as we look ahead to the next season. This week's Armada Clear and Cut Player of the Week is Michigan Wolverines defensive lineman Mason Graham. because if you look in the middle, they need that heavy duty defender next to Brian Bresee, who's going to go ahead and get the quarterback. They need the guy who's going to be able to, do a little bit of that, but also stop that defense, add a rugged presence in the middle. That's the one thing that Brian Bresee has not really shined. He got all those sacks, but he has not been able to step up in stopping the run. So Mason Graham, he's going to come in. He's going to be able to conquer the road with the capability and confidence of the Nissan Armada, and bring that vaulted Saints defense back to what it was against the run. There was that famous streak of them not allowing 100 yards rushing in a game for so long, and then they did it a bunch. So, but now they can dream big and go big like the Nissan Armada. Take Mason Graham and build out the defensive line. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what I think Mason Graham can do with the Saints. It's clear that our player of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, Pathfinder, and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Guys, I've seen the light, and I think I'm going to have to take the next one because there is a draft scenario that I would not like at all.
Oh.
What if the Saints want a quarterback, but both Jaxson Dart and Shedeur Sanders are on the board? I think there's two names that come to mind with a lot of people here. It's Jalen Milroe and Tyler Shough. Shough.
It's like shucking an oyster.
Yes,
which kind of makes the city make sense, but that's about it.
Yeah. I was gonna say that there's one scenario that Dylan the Nihilist Sanders hates, and it's Tyler Shough ending up with the New Orleans Saints. I think that of the guys in the top conversation, Jalen Milroe would be fine. I think you can see the light there. Tyler Shough, teammates with Juwan Johnson at Oregon. I think that he is just not a game changer. He is already stuck in that middle tier of passer to me that does not change the offense at all. You're not getting better from what I believe Spencer Rattler can bring to the offense with Tyler Shough. And I think he's, just going to be lower on the totem pole in every single way. So I think that would be a disaster. Jalen Milroe, on the other hand, you could easily talk me into. He's a game changer. He does something different. That's a direction that the offense could be going in. That's a building changer, in my opinion, with Jalen Milroe, but Tyler Shough, not at all. Ross, I see you shaking your head. What do you think?
No. I think that I'm nodding with you when you talk about Jalen Milroe, because I think Jalen Milroe has something special, and you can build around that in a bunch of different ways. Like I don't want to limit him to the, hey, you can change his position conversation, but at the absolute worst case scenario, you could absolutely do that. I think that the hits on Tyler Shough are like his age, which I couldn't care less about if I'm being completely honest. But I think the biggest things are like his injury history, and then he just has some ugly, ugly stuff on tape under pressure. And I think play under pressure is one of those things that translates to the NFL. Like you have to be able to handle that. And if you have sort of that, I mean, you saw how long it took Sam Darnold to shake that, right? Sam Darnold didn't really shake that until he was in Minnesota this year and everything. And so like, I feel that that's the thing that I'm most concerned about when it comes to Tyler Shough. But I'm also wouldn't be surprised if he were if he was one of the guys that they really liked. I wouldn't be surprised if they liked him more than some of the other guys that we're talking about and everything. Like he just feels like one of those players that remember, I can't remember when it was 2021, I think, when Davis Mills all of a sudden was a first round quarterback and he was the most pro ready passer in that draft and everything like that. Then he ended up going in the third round and then won like 5 games in his career and everything. Like that's kind of
what he wins 5 games.
Yeah, I think he was like 5-19-1. He had a tie as well. And I don't think he completed like 63% of his passes and stuff like that. And like he's a backup and a fairly good backup for the Houston Texans behind CJ Stroud now. And so like you could see to me, I feel like there's the parallel between Tyler Shough and Davis Mills in terms of like the late rise in the draft. But talent wise, I think Shough's more talented. And so I don't know, like he's such an enigma to me. I'd rather roll the dice on Jalen Milroe personally between those two. And if we're talking about, Dart, Ward, and Sanders being off the board, I'm kind of leaning like Milroe and then McCord later in the draft. But the division between McCord and Shough for me is tough.
Yeah, I think that they're definitely in the same tier of quarterback where I would feel much better about getting McCord in like the third round than Tyler Shough on,
who's like
the day one
going to go in the second, maybe into the first. Like
yeah.
So
I'll believe it when I see it. And I do want to be clear. I was not trying to do the Jalen Milroe position change conversation.
No. I was saying that was me saying that, like, if worse comes to worse, you could go that route, but but I was just making it clear. I didn't want to make that the focus of my point. The focus of my point was that, like, you can do a lot more with them. That was me safeguarding against myself because I don't want to limit Jalen Milroe to that conversation, but it is a part of the conversation for him that, like, okay, well, if it doesn't work, there's always this. But I think it can work as a quarterback. He just has to land in the right spot.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm more in line with Dylan than I am Louis Riddick. So I'm going to tell Lou Riddick to go Shough himself. And I just don't.
Lance with the zingers, man.
I just don't see it. And I'm not saying I don't see it as far as Tyler Shough being an NFL quarterback. I just don't, like, we're talking about this guy as a first round pick. And I understand this isn't the most talent rich quarterback class that we've seen. But I mean, what is it about him that would make anybody believe that guy deserves to be drafted in the first round? Now, I'm not one to shoot down anybody's dreams, right? Like, I went undrafted. So I'm clearly not an expert on where guys should go in the draft. But a lot of times my partner and I, when we're recruiting players and we're talking to their families around draft time, which is like now, and we looked at this mock draft and we looked at this mock draft, we tell them, look, mock drafts don't have any impact on what's going to happen, because a lot of times it's guys like the four of us sitting in a basement somewhere figuring out who we would prefer to put in what situation. Like, it's we don't know. And the only people that matter are the 32 GMs in each building that have actual picks. Nobody else has actual picks. So we can all talk about Tyler Shough and even Lou Riddick. He's not a GM, right? I think he should be. But then if I'm the president, I'm going to have some second thoughts about him for his level.
On that Tyler Shough.
I look, man, I would be on board for a Kyle McCord, potentially at 40, but maybe even better third round or later. I think this team's got too many holes, and if you're not getting a Cam Ward, I just don't necessarily see the scenario where you're really, really heavily invested, because even a second round pick is still a heavy investment. I like Jalen Milroe. I think he was a great college player. I think he leaves something to the imagination as far as his passing ability goes. I think that can be improved. But that Joker sure is dynamic with the ball in his hands, and he is a guy that can make up for some deficiencies up front and make plays with his legs. But I don't know that you necessarily want to live in that world, because as little as people talk about Lamar Jackson and the way that he can pass the ball, I think he's a lot better than people think he is, and he's continued to get better. So, I'm not necessarily saying that Jalen Milroe is Lamar Jackson or could be Lamar Jackson, but I think that, Lamar wasn't as great of a passer back then when he got drafted as he is now. And so there is potential there, but I just think that waiting a little bit later for somebody like a Kyle McCord would be a better move for the Saints, if that's something that they're thinking, about doing in this draft.
John, I'm going to jump on the sword real quick and say another quarterback we're not talking about is Quinn Ewers from Texas. That's somebody that they're very, very interested in. I will say that. And there's a certain particular person in that building who really likes him, but I won't say who. And just, I think of the quarterback conversation, the biggest thing for me is who can manage Kellen Moore's offense the best. Who can be the most accurate person and manage the game? That's who I want. I don't care if you can throw it for 80 yards. I mean, yes, arm strength, arms talent is a big thing, but I remember a certain receiver on this program talking about Drew Brees and his arm and all that other stuff. But you want somebody who can be precision and put the ball. And again, you look at the Saints and some of the problems that they've had over the past couple of years. They don't have the timing down. They don't have the same page. They're just some deficiencies there. And so I want to go with a guy who can manage the game accordingly, come in and be the most accurate person. That's really what I look at. And of course, you got to use your legs. You got to have smart processing here, have a good high football IQ. I think there's a lot of quarterbacks that do have that, but that's more what I look for. And just going back to Tyler Shough, look, maybe he can be somebody, but he also can be somebody that's going to fizzle out, right? Like, I just don't know. And quarterbacks have such a short life expectancy in this league. It's like, if you don't get it by year 2, you're expendable. Like, look at what happened with Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, some of these other quarterbacks. I mean, that's the biggest thing that you're looking at. And that's why, again, not to jump to a different segment, but a guy like Spencer Rattler could make sense for you, you know?
I'll tell you who you described when you talked about really good ball placement, good accuracy, can run an offense, could use their legs when they need to, and stuff like that. Boy, that sure does sound a lot like Shedeur Sanders. And so, like, the conversation around Shedeur continues to baffle me. Why isn't this guy the guy and everything? But I don't know. I'll pull back, because I guess that's an entirely different conversation. But like, I know we're talking about if he's not on the board, but you know, we're also, I think we're also resolved in the idea that the Saints just aren't going to take him. And I still think that's not a good decision. Like, I still think you should take Shedeur, but that's, maybe I'm alone in that. I don't know.
No, I agree. I think I've come back down to my nihilist. It doesn't matter. No, I think that Shedeur would be a great pick. But again, that's a different segment. But Ross, I want to know from you though, what if they do take a Shough or a Milroe? How does the draft around that look?
Yeah, I think it depends on where those guys go. If we were to concede that the idea would be that either one of those guys would be taken, if we make it easy and say at 40, like at the top of the second round, I think you get the opportunity to get your impact player in the first round, and then it gives you an opportunity throughout the rest of the draft to still be able to do some good things. A guy like, I don't know, Trey Harris out of Ole Miss is expected to be a third round guy. If he's there at 71, then you have whoever you invested in the first round, you have a quarterback, and then you still take care of your big bodied wide receiver. If you don't get that big bodied wide receiver, then maybe in the third round, you go with a corner, and you can still get a starting corner in this draft in the third round. It looks like you can still build your trenches in the third and fourth rounds. You can roll into your sixth and seventh rounds looking for guys that just simply have traits that you like, a la Kawan Baker back in the day and stuff like that, right? Guys that could be special teams players, but that are also like at premier positions in case they pan out. Will Shepard from Colorado as a wide receiver, or like Corey Black out of Oklahoma State, who they visited with, who like could come in and immediately be a special teams contributor for you, and then has traits to be a really good corner too. Played like 48% of his snaps in man coverage last year, and was typically lined up on shadowing the team's best receiver throughout most of his career as well. And so just kind of like interesting players that are later on in the draft. And so this is the thing that I think that thank you for asking this question, because it gets my wheels turning. But this is the thing that I think I've noticed about this entire draft, is that one selection won't dictate the rest of this draft at all. You have, with so many picks, assuming that they use and maximize as many of these selections as they can, that you still walk away with a real opportunity to draft a lot of players that can be starters or at least contributors for you. And that contribution can be through depth. That contribution can be through special teams, whatever it might be. Like, this draft is rich in talent that will hold on and make and stay on your roster, even though it's not necessarily what we would call like superstar heavy, to where you're drafting guys that are expected to be superstars at 15 or whatever. And so I think that if you did take one of those guys in the second round, or even use that pick and a third round pick to move up, or that pick and a fourth round pick to move up, that you still have a real opportunity with 8 total selections in the draft in that case, assuming you don't get an extra bit of pocket change back, to still be able to really build out your roster. I think this is a solid draft for where the Saints are. They just need to invest wisely.
Yeah. Well, coming up next, we're done with the quarterback selections, and we're going to see what would it look like if the Saints were to just be like, hey, let's build around Spencer Rattler. We already have him in the building. Welcome back, Who Dat Nation. What's up? We are going to be talking about now, Lance, I want to see your opinion. What if the Saints be like, hey, we're good in the trenches. We're good with Spencer Rattler. Let's build out the skill position. They go with a wide receiver in the first round, a tight end in the second round, a tight end in the first round, running back in the second round. What does it look like if those first 2 picks are going to be skill position players?
Well, I mean, if the idea is to move forward with Spencer Rattler, obviously that's not something that we're going to hear prior to the draft, like, because there's still the uncertainty of Derek Carr. But if that is the direction or the stance that they're taking, I love it. I do. I mean, I think that, you drafted him just a year ago. It's not like he's a guy that's been around for 5 years and you've played a little bit and then the ship is kind of sailed on him in your building. I just think that being able to surround him with more better players or more depth, more dynamic players, I just think that you will be able to see the best version of him, because I don't believe that last year was the best version of him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't run him out there with half of a starting unit on offense and expect to see the best possible version of him. So, I would love if that were their stance and that was the direction they chose to go in, because then again, you're able to add more players. You're able to, give your team and your offense a direction that they can all be going in, and, having more good players in the building is always going to benefit you, as opposed to, hey, we're drafting this young quarterback. Now we're going to have another quarterback competition and see who's going to be the guy. I mean, none of us really enjoyed the Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston situation.
That was wild
from a couple years ago. Like it's hard on a team, I think, when there's a quarterback competition and they're trying to figure out who's going to be the guy, because it's not just the coaches who are trying to figure out who's the guy. Like the offensive linemen are trying to figure out who's the guy. What's his cadence like? The skill guys are like, okay, who's the guy? Okay, this guy likes to do this. This guy likes to do that. I mean, it's confusing. And so being able to have a set direction and guy to kind of build around and guys to rally behind, I think that would be a great start for them. And I hope that's kind of the direction that they're choosing to go in.
I think that the best case scenario in my mind, if they do decide, hey, we're going to build around Spencer Rattler, is to make sure that they do end up taking a running back in the first or second round, just to have, build out the run game. Again, that's not me saying that I don't think that, they can't have a passing focused offense with Spencer Rattler. I just think that it does help a ton to have that young quarterback, to have the dynamic run game of Alvin Kamara plus to be able to lean back on. And if things are going well, let's run the ball this drive. Let's get the ball out of Rattler's hands. Let's let him reset and refocus and focus on having 2 dynamic running backs. I think that is the perfect scenario in my mind.
Yeah, I think that's a good call too, because I think like offensive line, pass catcher, running back become kind of the focus of like building the offense around. Basically just named in shorthand all of the positions. But I do think that like those things become even more important with that young running or young quarterback. I think the other thing that having a really, really good and strong and consistent run game, balanced run game, helps you with is that it gives you the play action playbook, the RPO playbook, letting your young quarterback kind of see the field with a little bit of space, a little bit of anticipation, and all those other things. Just kind of gives you that advantage in a way that I think is really important. I do think that getting either a big time yards after catch threat that can turn the 5-yard slant into a 15-yard play, or the big bodied, guy that can simply, help you move the chains and get your offense to a point where you're averaging 4 yards per play. You average 4 yards per play on offense, you're winning a football game. Like, it's that simple. And so if you have either one of those guys, or let me not get too crazy here, but maybe even both of those guys, and you add in this draft, then there's an opportunity to really help your young quarterback there too.
I think for me, obviously, if you could get Ashton Jeanty or Tyler Warren in the first round, that'd be fantastic, right? And I know people have talked about Teddy or McMillan. One of the guys that you just talked about, after yards after catch, all that stuff. I really like Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. I know he's kind of in that middle conversation, but I know Teddy Ora has got to be probably some people's one of the top guys and stuff, but I really like that concept. But if you go like a Tyler Warren in the first round, second round, a Trevion Henderson from Ohio State would probably be the direction I would lean on that aspect. Look, and if you can get Jeanty in the first round, which I don't know if you can, round 2, you could get somebody like a Mason Taylor from LSU. I think there are some possibilities there where you could still come away with a really nice skill position, haul here if you do go running back, wide receiver, tight end, in that type of mindset, if you will. Dylan Sampson from Tennessee is another good day 2 pick. I think that they could look at. They got another running back from Tennessee who does pretty good too already. So look, I think when you look at it, if you're going to use Spencer Rattler, if you're going to build around him, you need some good weapons there. I think you need to have that ground game, like I've been kind of harping on. But I also think you have to have that tight end, that security blanket. And I know they got Juwan, you're going to have a Foster Moreau coming back from injury. We don't know what Taysom Hill's role is going to be. Dallin Holker, I don't know what he's going to end up doing. I think if you get another tight end, it might push him out a little bit. But, again, if you're going to make a second-year quarterback or a young quarterback feel comfortable, have a good ground game, and then also make your passing game to where you can get skill players who can have that rack or be able to turn explosive plays, or get that tight end who can help move the change. I think that's an easy formula to help with Kellen Moore's first year, and he can design an offense that does that.
Yeah. Is there a world where the Saints, looking to trade back up into the first round is for, maybe it's a year kind of like where they got Olave and Penning where they want to impact players. Could they look to be getting a second impact player in the draft? I mean, there's a ton of fun wide receivers that are going to be around in this, the second half of the first round. Could that be a situation, Ross?
Could be that. Could be offensive line as well, a place where you build the trenches, which is another version of still building around your young quarterback and everything. A trade into the bottom part of the first round puts you in position for guys like Josh Connolly out of Oregon, Josh Simmons out of Ohio State, who we mentioned earlier, even potentially Kelvin Banks out of Texas, who can play inside and out. But I think maybe most teams look at him as outside. I'm not sure. But let's say that they invest in the trenches at 9, to your point, Dylan, Alec Ayumanner out of Stanford late in the first round. Could make sense.
Guy we haven't talked about a lot. I like him a lot.
I like him a lot too. Big physical dude, has some things to clean up in terms of, I think he had 6 drops last year, 6 drops the year before that. So just cleaning up like some hands and some tracking stuff from what we can see. But like outside of that, just big physical, has that I'm better than you mentality, which I think every wide receiver should have, and has the ability to, as a run blocker as well as a big physical presence. So I like him a lot. And you don't necessarily need to trade into the first round to do that. You could trade up in the second round simply and do that. Just move from 40 to the mid 30s or something like that. Same thing for Jaden Higgins, who we talked about here on the show out of Iowa State. Iowa State. So there's like those guys. I was like, did I say Iowa or Ohio? And then I had to think to myself which one I said, and then I happened to say the right one. But like, yeah, there's absolutely those guys that you have the ability to potentially move up for that aren't necessarily quarterbacks that can still contribute to your young quarterback.
Yeah, I think that the receiver position is one that people kind of get enamored with the fact like, oh, the Saints need a big-bodied wide receiver. I kind of argue, I guess my argument is against that. I think they need somebody in the slot that is a moneymaker, right? A guy that can beat man coverage, that can win on third downs, a guy that can win in the red zone. Somebody who's different than the guys that we have on the outside, right? And generally, your speedsters are the guys that play on the outside. So if you add a big body guy, is it a big body guy like a Tyler Warren who plays inside, who can win inside, or is it somebody of the mode of like a Marcus Colston, or even Michael Thomas was somebody that had a lot of success in the slot?
Yep.
Just drafting a big guy that you're going to play outside, I think potentially could move one of your other receivers, either Olave or Rashid Shaheed, inside. And I just don't know that they are as comfortable. I'm not saying that those guys can't have success in there, but I just think that having a guy whose majority of his role is playing inside and winning against those nickelbacks and different coverages, somebody who's comfortable in there finding the holes in the zones. I mean, that's something that we've lacked for quite some time in this offense. And I think that they would benefit from being able to draft somebody like Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, who kind of lived in the slot in his career there. That to me would make more sense than, hey, let's get McMillan, let's get one of these big body guys. We need a big red zone threat. Like I just am not in love with that idea. Not to say that you draft somebody like that and he comes in that he's not going to be good. I just think talking about need and specifics for this team, hey,
I was about to say, sounds very familiar to Saints wide receiver.
Every time I go around the building, they're like, we just don't have a Lance Mourning, or we just don't have a Lance Mourning. And I say, yeah, you don't have anybody that dances like me anymore. I get it.
But I think like Lance, I think we saw like Willie Snead was able to kind of contribute to that a little bit and everything when he was around. Like there were absolutely those players, and Willie almost had 1,000-yard season, that 1 year and everything like that, like post, so I don't know. I think you're right. I completely agree with you, actually, that like that slot specialist player is one of the reasons why I actually kind of advocated for the idea of going after Cooper Kupp, because you didn't need Cooper Kupp to be the main focus of the offense. You didn't need him to be, you didn't really even need him to be a 17 full game, like a 60 snap game guy. You know what I mean? You just wanted somebody to come in and help you out and be able to be that hard working chain mover that could do some of the dirty work. So I like that a lot. I think I spoke with a team source that said that like when they look at the wide receiver side of it all, that they're not necessarily looking for anything specific, that like what they want is an elite trait. And that elite trait could be speed. It could be, it could be the big body. It could be the red zoneness, or to Lance's point, or it could be yards after catch. You think about like an Elijah Badger or a Kyle Williams or somebody like that in this year's draft, or it could just be that guy that helps you move the damn chains from doing the dirty work in the slot. I think that is in and of itself an elite trait as well. So that's awesome. That's a great call.
That's one of the reasons why we talked about it a couple episodes ago about free agent wide receivers. A guy like Elijah Moore, I think he could still has a lot of untapped potential. And so if you don't draft somebody, I'm just saying
that's the one that's famous for his end zone celebration.
It's true. It's true.
I don't know. Just saying. There are a lot of ways that you can eat the elephant. So what they do, we're gonna find out.
Oh man!
I'd like to clarify there are 0 ways for me to eat the elephant. I just want to be
not
very
you,
clear.
but
I just think that the more we talk about it, I think that this is the scenario in the draft that makes me the most excited. Just, building out this offense to see what Rattler can do. You already have him in the building, give him the chance. I feel like the locker room is going to be the most receptive to Spencer Rattler just because, he's been there. He's been putting in the work. He's been showing that he's ready. And I think that is, just a good sign to start out this era. It would be a good move of good faith.
Yeah,
put it that way.
I put a poll in the chat, by the way, of yes or no. Would you like to see the Saints give Spencer Rattler a chance at quarterback in 2025? And right now, of the votes, it's 83% yes. So
smart.
To your point, Dylan, it sounds like the fan base would rally around the idea too.
Mm-hmm. And that would be a change.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody was the same boat last year as let Spencer Rattler. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Where did everybody go from last year when you were saying, well, Spencer Rattler just needs the starting lineup, all this other stuff? It's just like, it's just crazy. Like pick a lane again, pick a lane, stay in it. Which one are you going to do?
I think we're partly at fault for that too, right? Like, or media as a whole, in terms of like talking about, well, now there's these quarterbacks and this quarterback, and the team loves this quarterback, the team loves that quarterback, and everything. And so like fans kind of get in this space of like, okay, well, it looks like the team's ready to move on. So if the team is moving on, then I guess I like this guy more and everything like that. But really, the idea here, and I think this is a good thing, it feels like no one actually knows what the Saints are going to do. And when you have a new coaching staff that's come in, there's a lot of opportunities for cracks in the foundation when it comes to that, because they have previous existing relationships with this, that, and the other, whatever it might be. And I think it's actually the biggest thing that's kind of the positive that comes from this offseason so far is that they ain't a lot of cracks in the foundation. It's tough. It's tough to get information. And I actually think that's a good thing. I think the fact that like the Saints are kind of all over the map in terms of projections outside the building means they know exactly what they want to do inside the building. We just don't know what that is yet.
Well, we're not too far away from finding out what it is they're going to do. We only have one more episode before the draft, and that'll be next week. Thank you for listening to the Saints Squad this week. Next on Thursday. You know what I mean?
Thursday.
On Thursday.
Not next week.
It's in 3 days.
In 3
What do
days.
you mean? It's in 3 days.
Well, thank you for listening to the Saints Squad on this Monday. We'll see y'all on Thursday. Check out me, Ross, John, and Lance on our socials for the latest on what we think about the Saints. And then we'll be back on Thursday ready to talk about the 2025 NFL Draft that is happening that night. It's almost over, guys. It's almost over.